how consumers behave, or how people behave, how market behave, right? So, we learned the concepts of demand and supply, law of demand, law of supply, and when the demand and supply interact in the market, right? What happens if the price is below the equilibrium price or above the equilibrium price, and so on, right? In chapter 7, now we're going to talk about why, right? Why consumers behave such a way. Exactly the law of demand, right? When the price comes down, quantity demanded increases, vice versa, okay? But exactly what's going on in the consumer's mind, okay? And so we're talking about the consumer psychology, right? In this chapter. Okay? Well, the ultimate assumption in economics is people, whether the person is a consumer or producer, right? He or she is trying to maximize his or her happiness in the given situation, right? And by situation we mean the amount of money the person has, right? And under the given prices, right? There are prices in everything, right? So considering the amount of money you have and the amount of money you have to pay when you purchase or consume anything, right? Everybody is trying to maximize his or her happiness, okay? And that's what we call rationality, right? So we believe, or we assume, that people are rational, right? So rationality, or economic rationality, means this. People are trying to make themselves better off or they are trying to prevent themselves from being worse off. Yeah. People are trying to make themselves better off under any circumstances, or trying to prevent themselves from being worse off. Any question? No? Can read? Yeah? Okay, so that's what we mean by rationality. Right? So think about this. What do we mean by this? So any behavior to make yourself happier, right, or better off, okay, can be considered rational. So concept of rationality, economic rationality, is slightly different from the concept of rationality in ordinary sense, right? Exactly how is it different? Think about this. How about some illegal behavior like stealing, robbing someone, or let's say using drugs or prostitution. Okay? you can consider in normal sense, in everyday sense, that these behaviors are irrational because, first of all, they are illegal, right? And there will be consequences if you commit those, criminal behaviors, right? You can go to jail, or by using drugs, you can hurt yourself, right? Significantly, severely, right? But in economic sense, these people, even criminals or drug users, right? At that moment, they have made that choice thinking that this is better choice under the circumstances. Or perhaps they thought that was the only possible choice, right? Stealing. Well, maybe you were so hungry, right? And knowing that you can be caught and you can go to jail later, right? But at the moment, stealing is better than just going starved or whatever. Yeah. So that kind of behavior is still rational in economic sense, right? As long as you thought that it would be better, right? Or you will feel better, right? By making this choice. Okay? The only irrational behavior, or examples of irrational behavior we can think of, is something like, well, if you go on top of a building and throw all your money down to the street, right? Then, if people behave such a way, right, then there is no way we can predict that person's behavior. In other words, we won't be able to make any economic theory, right, if people behave such a way or unpredictable way. Right? What about sending money to charity organization? Is that rational? Is that economically rational behavior? You have $20 in your pocket, right? And with that money, this weekend you could have watched maybe a couple of movies, or could have drank maybe 5 bottles of beer, right? But instead you decided to send that $20 to a charitable organization, right? So, are you trying to make yourself better off, or trying to prevent yourself from being worse off? What do you think? Any idea? Any opinion? Well, in economics, we consider that a rational behavior. Because, why? You send the money to charitable organization because what? Why would you send your money to charitable organization? Think about it yourself. Huh? Why? Why would you send your money to charitable organization? What do you get? Maybe some psychological satisfaction, right? You feel better about helping other people, obviously, right? Otherwise, you won't send your money to charitable organization, right? Nobody is forcing you to send that money, right? But people voluntarily do that because they feel better about themselves, right? So yeah, that is a economically rational behavior. Okay? So let's see. Suppose you were given a choice between, say, nice, fresh, unused can of Pepsi. It's a very hot day, right? You're thirsty, right? And you have a choice between the nice, cold, unused, unopened can of Pepsi and a empty can of Pepsi, right? Already used, it's empty, right? And if you choose an empty can over unused can of Pepsi, right? Then economically that is irrational behavior, right? If people behave such a way, right, then there is no way we can predict, right, what people will do in any situation, right? You understand? That is considered irrational because that doesn't help. That doesn't make that person better off or prevent from being worse off. Right? You get the idea of economic rationality? Did you have a question? Yeah. I thought you raised your hand. No? Oh, okay. Okay. All right. Yeah. So that's the assumption we have, right? So based on that assumption, we're trying to analyze how people make this choice. Right? When every month you get some money, right? You get your salary, right, or whatever, and then you have to make so many different choices, right? How to distribute your money on all these different consumption items, starting from food and what kind of food, right? Pizza, kimchi jjigae, whatever. Yeah. So how many of these things am I gonna eat, right? Then how about the other things like apparel, education, utility, entertainment, whatever, right? There's so many things that you can consume, you can spend your money on, right? All right? So in order to analyze the things, we have to think about a few terminology first. Okay? Utility is the same thing as satisfaction, right? In economics, we call satisfaction utility, right? So we are assuming that people are trying to maximize the total utility, right, by making the consumption choices. In other words, people are making certain choices so that they will maximize the total utility they receive from all those consumption choices. Right? About the utility, we have to understand one thing, okay? Because it's exactly the satisfaction, right? It is unquantifiable. Unquantifiable, right? Meaning you cannot measure satisfaction using units, right? Like grams or centimeters or whatever, right? Satisfaction cannot be measured by units, right? You agree? Right? So, then how do you analyze this thing? Obviously, we're trying to come up with the choices that maximize the total satisfaction, right? But if we cannot measure, right, if we cannot quantify the amount of satisfaction, right, is it possible to find any, the reasonable, as a result of some analysis, come up with the answer, right? Well, even though it is not quantifiable, first of all, we believe it can be ordered. The preference order. Preference order. Preference can be ranked. Okay? In other words, we can tell whether one thing is preferred or another. Okay? So let's say you have 5 different choices. Okay? This weekend, you can spend your $20 on movies or beer or whatever. Date, you can have a date, right? Or just eating a lot of food, say ice cream, whatever, right? So let's say you have A, B, C, D, E, right? 5 choices, right? And since they are not quantifiable, the amount of satisfaction cannot be measured in units, right? There's no way you can say, you know, A is twice as better as B, or B gives 3 times as much satisfaction as C does, right? There's no way you can say those things, right? But you can still say, I prefer A to C, and C is preferred to, say, D, and D is preferred to E, and E is preferred to, say, B, something like that, right? So you can order or rank order your preference. That is possible, yeah? Do you agree? Even though you cannot say A is exactly how much better than C, there's no way you can say that, right? Okay, so that's the idea of this utility, concept of utility. Right? But our analysis in this chapter about the consumer behavior, it requires marginal utility. And economics, you probably read from chapter so far, right? In economics, marginal analysis is very important. So even though we try to maximize the total utility, total satisfaction, right? Ultimately, what matters is one last unit, right? So so far you drank 3 bottles of beer, and you feel pretty good already, right? The question is, should you drink another bottle, or should you go home, right? At this point, after 3 bottles, right? How do you decide whether you're going to continue to drink or you're going to quit and go home, right? What matters is how much additional satisfaction you're going to get from that one last bottle, and you're going to compare that to the cost, right? How much you have to pay for that last bottle, right? So the marginal utility analysis, we have to use the marginal utility, right? And marginal utility is the amount of additional satisfaction you get from another unit of whatever you've been consuming, right? Well, in order to do that, we have to be able to quantify. We have to be able to measure exactly how much satisfaction you will get from one last bottle of beer or one last scoop of ice cream, right? So it is a little bit funny, but in economics, in this class at least, and in your future classes, as long as you learn economics, right, we're going to assume that utility is quantifiable, okay? And we're going to use util as a unit of measurement that can be used to measure satisfaction. Okay? So we're going to be able, from now on, right, in this course, right, many times we will use some called util as a measurement of satisfaction. But you have to understand that this is fake. I mean, this is hypothetical, right? In fact, in reality, there is no way you can actually measure the satisfaction, right? But just for the analysis purpose and illustrative purpose, right, we will use util as the unit. Yeah? All right. So there's what's called the law of diminishing marginal utility, just like law of demand or law of supply, right? This is just observation, what happens in real life, right? We found out that if you consume the same thing over and over, if you consume additional units of the same thing, right? Then eventually the satisfaction you get from each additional unit decreases. Do you agree? Is that true? Let's see, who's in this class? Junsu?
Yes.
Ah, pick the right man, huh? What's your 주량? Huh?
건명이요.
소주? 맥주? 소주? 소주 한 병?
소주 한 병에.
How about in beer?
그거 안 써봤는데.
Unlimited?
맥주는 취할 때까지 안 먹었어요.
Really? How many bottles have you had what was the maximum number of bottles have you?
맥주?
Uh-huh.
8병은 먹었던 것 같은데.
Really? Wow. 8 bottles of beer. Yeah. So, what made you stop after 8 bottles?
배불러가지고.
Yeah. So that was the maximum you could hold in your stomach, right? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, whether it's beer or excuse me, ice cream or whatever, right? Eventually, you will stop, right? Because at some point in time, another unit, another bottle of beer or another scoop of ice cream, right, will not give you enough satisfaction, which is worth that money. What's the price, right? Right? Yeah. So yeah, here, that's the idea of law of diminishing marginal utility, right? So here's a hypothetical table. Here we have a number of slices of pizza from 0 slice to 6 slices, right? And the amount of satisfaction, this is the total satisfaction, total utility, after eating these units of pizza, slices of pizza, right? So, for example, first slice of pizza will give you 20 utils, okay? 20 units of satisfaction, right? And second slice, after eating second slice, the total satisfaction you receive is 36 util, right? So what that means is that second slice of pizza gave you 16 additional utils, right? The total satisfaction, total util increased by 16 units, right? So here's the concept of marginal utility, right? And this is the total utility, right? So if you draw a graph of the total utility, it's going to increase like this, right? For each additional unit of consumption, the total satisfaction increases, right? But it does not increase in linear fashion, right? The slope becomes less and less, right? Because each additional unit gives you less and less additional amount of satisfaction, right? Eventually, as you see here, the sixth slice of pizza actually gave you negative satisfaction. What do you mean by negative satisfaction? Negative satisfaction. What is it? How do you explain that? What could have happened here? Food?
Being feeling
full. Full, okay. Well, maybe it was over full. Right? So maybe you had a stomach ache or something, right? Or if this was a beer, what happens if you drink too many? Yeah. You feel nauseous, right? You'll have hangover, right? You'll have some yeah, discomfort, right? So yes, some if you have too many of this consumption, the same thing, right? Then instead of actually the satisfaction, you can have some dissatisfaction or discomfort, right? It's going to actually decrease your total satisfaction. That is possible, right? Okay, the graph of marginal utility goes like this, right? So from the first unit, you got the maximum or 20 utils of satisfaction, but each additional unit, you got less and less satisfaction, right? From this thing, right? And if you think about it, I mean, whether it's a beer or ice cream or whatever, movies, right? Even sex, right? You can get decreasing satisfaction. Maybe somebody has different idea, right? Is it the more the better? No limit, right? Well, okay, so yeah, that's typically the case with everything, right? And in the end, you can even have negative value of marginal utility, right? That's the law of diminishing marginal utility. Excuse me. Okay, so here's let's think about this some hypothetical case. So now we understand the concept of utility and the marginal utility and law of diminishing marginal utility, right? We're trying to come up with the choice, right? So how do we allocate our money or resource, right, to maximize the total happiness or total satisfaction? Okay. Well, of course, we have many different choices, many alternatives. Okay. But let's think about the simplest case. Suppose we have two choices, two alternatives, A and B, right? And then once we understand how we make that decision, we can apply that to many alternative cases, right? All right. So we have pizza on the left side. We already had this number already, right? And then suppose the other choice was Coke. Okay? And so we have, after the first cup of Coke, you got 20 utils, right? The second cup of Coke gives you 15 additional utils, right? So the total satisfaction after the 2 cups of Coke would be 35, and so on. Okay? And then we need to do one more thing here, right? We need to calculate marginal utility per dollar. So marginal utility you got from each additional unit divided by the price, right? Because, why? Because everything has price, right? And then you are paying same dollar, right? So while you spend that $1, right, how much satisfaction you get from spending $1, right? That's what matters, right? So if you spend $1 on pizza versus if you spend the same dollar on Coke, right? Do you get equal amount of satisfaction or not? Right? If you get larger amount of satisfaction when you spend $1 on pizza compared to the same $1 on Coke, right? Obviously, your better choice will be spending that last dollar on pizza, right? That way you can increase your total satisfaction, right? That's the idea, right? So, ultimate condition we find out is this, right? The utility maximization. Right? Utility maximization condition between two choices is, let's say, suppose you have a choice between A and B, right? Marginal utility you get from the last unit of A divided by price of A must be equal to marginal utility you get from the last unit of B divided by price of B. Right? And this is what we call utility maximization condition. Okay? How do we know? How do we explain this thing? Very simple. Right? The reason is, if these were not equal, let's say if this was this or this, right? Then there is a room for improvement. By reallocating your consumption, you can increase the total satisfaction, right? But if they are equal, there is no way you can improve. It's like climbing, right? Suppose you're climbing a mountain, say Mount Everest. Eh? You're climbing on the mountain towards the peak, right? And they say, well, if you climb a very high mountain, you know, towards the end, people are exhausted and so tired, and especially in high mountains, there's lack of oxygen, right? So many times these climbers are out of their mind. They're almost unconscious, right? And they just keep walking one step at a time, right? Without thinking, right? And then suddenly you find out that there is no more, there is no other place to go. There is no higher ground to step, right? Then you realize that you are at the peak, right? That's what they say, yeah? In this climbing high mountains, right? So that applies to many situations in economics. You will find out whether you're trying to maximize the satisfaction or you're trying to maximize profit, right? Same idea, same thing happens, right? So if, let's say, this is 5 and this is 10 somehow, right? So that means when you spend $1 on A right now, you get 5 units of satisfaction, right? But if you spend same $1 on B, you get 10 utils of satisfaction, right? Then what should you do? Are you maximizing your total satisfaction right now? Is there any way to improve? In other words, is there any way to increase your total satisfaction? Yes. What you can do is spend $1 less on this item and use that $1 on here, right? Then you will lose 5 utils from A, because right now when you spend $1 on A, you are receiving 5 utils, right? So if you spend $1 less on A, you will receive 5 less utils, right? However, if you use that the same $1 on B, you will receive 10 utils, right? So what's going to happen to your total amount of satisfaction? If you shift $1 from here to here, your total satisfaction will increase by how many units? 5, yes. Right? You see that? If they are unequal, then there's a room for improvement. You can by shifting $1 from here to here, you can increase the total satisfaction. If this is the case, let's say this, well, whatever, 20, 10, right? Then, obviously, you are consuming too many of B. Why? because obviously compared to the price, marginal utility is low. If marginal utility is low, considering the law of diminishing marginal utility, right? What happens right now is you have consumed too many of this thing, right? So if you reduce the consumption, the marginal utility will increase, right? So we just talked about this, right? And I told you you should shift $1 from here to here, right? Then, total utility will increase. We just talked about it, right? But then what about this item? What's going to happen? So let's say, so right now the situation was like this, right? Suppose you receive 10 utils from one additional unit of A, but the price of A was $2, right? You receive 10 utils from one last unit of B, but the price of B was $1, right? So obviously, if you shift $1 from here to here, right, the total satisfaction will increase, right? But at the same time, what's going to happen is because you are consuming less of A, right, this marginal utility of A will increase, right? And because you are consuming a little more of B, marginal utility of B will decrease, and eventually it will become equal, right? You see, right? So by shifting this thing from $1 from here, right? Well, it may not happen in the first time, but if you keep doing it, as long as this side is smaller than this side, right? If you keep shifting, eventually they will become equal. In other words, you will come to the optimal consumption combination. Okay? Yeah. So here, let's use this example and see what happens here, right? So let's see. For example, here. If you think about this marginal utility per dollar column from pizza and from Coke, right? You see 10 here and 10 here, right? So obviously, consuming one slice of pizza and three cups of Coke, right? That's one combination where the total utility is maximized. In other words, that's one optimal combination, right? Let's see. So here we're talking about one slice of pizza and 3 cups of Coke, right? And the assumption is pizza costs $2 per slice, and Coke costs $1 per cup, right? So what's the budget here? What's the amount of money you need to consume this combination? $5, right? $5. Okay? And what about the total utility? If you consume this combination, what's the total satisfaction you receive? Well, for that you need to go back to the first table, right? So if you consume one pizza, you get 20 utils. After consuming 3 cups of Coke, you receive 45, right? So total satisfaction is 20 plus 45 is 65. Okay? Now, suppose you are not at this optimal combination, right? So let's say right now you're consuming 2 pizzas 2 slices of pizzas and 1 Coke. 1 cup of Coke. Right? Are you maximizing the utility, or are you satisfying that utility maximization condition? Well, at 2 slices of pizzas, your marginal utility is 16, right? Here, 16. So you're at 16 divided by 2 on this side, right? And after drinking 1 cup of Coke, your marginal utility is 20, right? So 20 divided by price of Coke is $1, right? Which one? Well, obviously, we have this situation. This is 8, this is 20, right? So, are you maximizing your total utility? No. Right? First of all, what about the B? How much does it cost? That's the same $5, right? Because pizza slices are $2 a piece, right? So $4 plus $1, that's $5, right? What about the total utility? After consuming 2 slices of pizzas, that's 36, right? Plus 1 cup of Coke gives you 20, right? Which is 56. Okay? Right? So obviously, while spending the same amount of money, right? You're not satisfying, or you are not maximizing your satisfaction, right? There is a way to improve, right? Obviously here, think about it, right? Here, this is 8 and this is 20, which means right now, the last $1 you spent on pizza gave you 8 utils, right? Understand? Right? But that $1 you spent on Coke gave you 20 utils. So what should you do? How do you adjust, huh?
Choose the 20.
Right. So if you have that one last dollar you spent, right? That should have been spent on Coke rather than pizza, right? So you have to shift $1 or whatever, the money from pizza to Coke. Right now you are consuming too many slices of pizzas because your marginal utility is lower, right, than the marginal utility you get from Coke, right? So if you consume a little bit less slices of pizza, right, this will increase, right? And then if you spend that $1 on Coke, right, the marginal utility of Coke will go down, so it will probably restore the equality here, right? See, in this situation, it was what? 20 over 2, and this was what? 10 over 1, right? 1 slice of pizza gives you 20, that the marginal utility was 20, right? And how about Coke? The 3 cups of Coke, the marginal utility was 10. Right? So this was equal. Right? So we know that this is optimal combination, consumption combination. Right? So let's say, suppose you decided to consume 1 less slice of pizza, which means you will save $2 from pizza side, right? And use that $2 on Coke, right? Additional cups of Coke, right? Then we're going to, from this situation to this situation, right? From 2 slices of pizza to 1 slices of pizza, from 1 cup of Coke to 3 cups of Coke, right? Well, as you see, the total utility will increase and will arrive to this condition, right? So once you arrive to this condition, is there any way to improve or to make it better off by changing the consumption? Think about it. By shifting $1 from here to here, or the other way around, from here to here, right? Can you improve? No. Because right now, whether you spend that one last dollar on here or here, you get the same amount of satisfaction, right? You get exactly 10 utils from $1 spent on slices of pizza and 10 utils from $1 on Coke, right? So there is no way you can improve, right? That's the idea, yeah? Okay, so it says to maximize utility, a consumer has to satisfy two conditions, right? This identity, equality condition, and then you should exhaust your budget. What does that mean, right? Exhaust your budget, right? Well, because, you know, whatever the money you have, whatever the budget you have, right? The goal, if your goal is trying to achieve the largest amount of satisfaction, right? Then perhaps you should try to spend all your money. Well, more exactly here. In our example, right, there are three possible combination choices, right? One slice of pizza and 3 cups of Coke. We just talked about that. Yeah? One slice of pizza and 3 cups of Coke. That will cost you $5, right? With the while you spend $5, we found out this is better than this. Right? If you're going to spend $5, you should consume 1 slice of pizza and 3 cups of Coke rather than 2 slices of pizza and 1 cup of Coke, right? Right? But what if you have more money? Suppose your budget is $10 rather than $5, right? Then, according to this table, right, we have another combination choice here. 3 slices of pizza and 4 cups of Coke. That'll cost you $10, right? Because pizzas are $2 a slice, right? Coke is $1 per cup, right? And if you do that, then you can actually achieve 96 utils rather than 65 utils. Yeah? Obviously, because you're spending more money, right? Okay? And this 3 slices of pizza and 4 cups of Coke obviously satisfy this condition, right? If you go back to, yeah. 3 slices of pizza, we have 10 util divided by $2, which is 5. So if you spend $1 on pizza, you get 5 units of satisfaction, right? And after 4 cups of Coke, right? Marginal utility is 5, and since the price of Coke is what, $1 per cup, right? The marginal utility divided the price is 5. In other words, if you whether you spend $1 on pizza or Coke, you get equal amount of satisfaction, right? So this condition is satisfied, right? And well, you can try. Okay. Let's see. Talking about 3 slices of pizza and 4 cups of Coke, right? Found out the budget is $10, right? And the total utility at that moment was what, 96, Okay? Yeah, you can find out from the table. Right? So it's 46 plus 50, right? 46 plus 50, 96. Right? What if you were consuming two slices of pizza and 6 cups of Coke? 2P, 6C. That's what, $4 plus $6, that's still $10, right? So budget is same $10, right? What about this condition? Are we satisfying this condition? Well, 2 slices of pizza's marginal utility is 16, right? So 16 divided by 2. On this side, 6 cups of Coke. The marginal utility is what? It's -1. Right? Divided by price. Right? So obviously we have this situation, which means right now you're drinking too many cups of Coke. You should spend some money, less money on Coke and more money on pizza. Right? So we have to shift some money from here to there, right? Well, that's this choice, right? In order to consume another slice of pizza, you need $2, right? So that means you have to reduce the number of cups, Coke, cups by 2 cups, right? Right? So if you do that, then obviously this condition will be satisfied, right? And what about the total utility? If you consume the 2 slices of pizza and 6 cups of Coke, the total total utility was what? 36 plus 52, right? 36 plus 52, 88, right? So, yes, right? You can improve, right? As long as you have inequality here, by adjusting your consumption, right? You can improve the total satisfaction, right? Okay, that's the idea. Yeah? Any questions so far? Okay, good. So that's the quite interesting analysis here so far, what we've seen. Yeah? So using this concept, we can actually come up with a better explanation for the law of demand. In the previous chapter, in chapter 3, we talked about the law of demand, right? Law of demand simply means demand curve is downward sloping, right? So whenever price comes down, quantity demanded increases, right? That was the idea of law of demand, right? And at that time we used the concept of income effect and substitution effect, right, to explain this law of demand, right? But here we can actually use the numbers, right, exactly to prove this law of demand. Okay, let's say initially we were at the optimal combination, right? So right now, initially the marginal utility pizza was 10, and price was $2, right? And the marginal utility you got from Coke was 5, and since price is $1, right? So 2 sides were equal, which means you were maximizing your total satisfaction, right? And then suddenly they have a sale on pizza. This week they're having a sale on pizza. So instead of $2 a slice, they're charging $1.50 per slice. Right? Then what's going to happen to the optimal consumption combination, optimal consumption bundle, right? So suddenly, because price is lower, instead of $2, it's 1.5, right? Instead of 5, it used to be 5 here, and now it's what? Something more than 7 point something, right? No, 6 point something? Yeah, almost 7. It's definitely larger than 5. Okay? So, now we have this situation. Right? They are not equal. Then, what's going to happen? What are you going to do? Should you have more pizza or less pizza? More pizza, right? Because now, when you spend $1 on pizza, you get more satisfaction than $1 spent on Coke, right? So you should shift money from Coke consumption to pizza consumption. You should drink a little bit less Coke, right? And use that money to consume a little more pizza, right? And then your total satisfaction will increase. Okay? So any rational consumer will do that. P, Q, let's say, okay, $2, $1.50, right? And let's say at $2 per slice, you've been consuming, say, 3 slices of pizza, right? If they put the pizza on sale, or price comes down, you will consume what? More pizza. Any rational consumer will increase the amount of consumption on pizza, right? So we have this consumption bundles, right? Which means we have demand curve, right? Downward sloping demand curve, right? That makes sense, right? If people are trying to satisfy this condition. Have you ever thought about this when you make your consumption decision? When they have sale on something, right? Did you actually calculate this, marginal utility per dollar, right? And thought, hey, now 2 sides are not equal. Right? I have to restore the equality, right? So I have to spend a little more money here and less there, right? Nobody thinks about that, right? And especially think about it. How many different goods and services you consume every month, right? How many different goods and services you consume every month? Probably thousands, right? Even food choices are so many, right? And then there are many choices for entertainment, right? Yeah, playing games, drinking beer, watching movie. What else do you do? What? Coin 노래방? You can go to coin 노래방 and yeah. So how do you make all these choices? I mean, how do you allocate your money to all different choices, right? So we have, say, X1, X2. We have so many different choices, right? XK, right? And what's the condition, or what's the way to come up with optimal consumption bundle? In other words, how should you allocate your money to all different choices? Well, according to this idea, right, we know that if you can calculate the marginal utility you receive from the first item, yeah, or last unit of the first item, right, divided by price of that item, right, and make it equal to the marginal utility you get from the last unit of the second item divided by price of that item, right, and so on. Or utility you receive from the last unit of this K, the last item, right, divided by price of K, right? Then your total satisfaction will be maximized, right? Which means you will come up to the optimal combination bundle, right? Do people do that? Does anybody do that in this world? Probably not. Not exactly this way. First of all, utility or satisfaction is not quantifiable, right? So there is no way you can actually calculate all these things, right? Right? But you think about it. When you make your consumption choice, like, well, I have $10 right now, right? And what should I do with this money? Well, you can have some ice cream, or drink beer, watch a movie, whatever, go to 노래방. Well, you consider the amount of satisfaction you will receive from this item, each item, right? And then you will also consider the price, right? Won't you? Don't you do that? Yeah? So subconsciously, everybody does that. Everybody's doing this. Right? If you have a few choices, right, you will compare the amount of satisfaction you will receive, right? And then, well, of course, not in exact amount, but subconsciously you will compare which one is better, right? At this point, what do you call that? 술고파? What? 술고파? 밥고파? What? Something like that. What do you want? What do I want exactly? Right? More. Drink? 노래? Whatever. Sing? You want to sing? Eh? Which one will make you happier? Right? Everybody does that, right? Subconsciously, right? And then you also consider the price, right? So that's what we're doing, right? We're considering the amount of additional satisfaction you will receive. So what matters at this point is how much additional satisfaction I'm going to get from additional unit of beer or additional unit of movie. What doesn't matter is how many bottles you have already drunk or how many movies you've already watched. Doesn't matter. You understand? Doesn't matter. Even suppose you watched 10 movies already this weekend, right? That doesn't count. That doesn't matter. What matters is, okay, if I watch another movie, how much better will I feel, or how much happier will I feel, right? That's what matters, right? So that's why the marginal analysis is important. Oh, and some people may say, after watching just 2 movies, they say, I've had enough, no more movies, right? Which means, I'm not going to get any additional satisfaction from another movie, right? But some people, even after watching 5 movies, right, they may still want to watch another movie, right? So, in the end, what matters is the additional or marginal utility, right? You get from additional unit of consumption, right? Total consumption at that point doesn't matter, right? Okay? All right, so we're going to continue in this chapter. We're going to talk about the elasticity on Tuesday. Okay? And yeah, I will upload another note probably over the weekend. Okay? Any question? Have a good weekend. I'll see you on Tuesday.